Hello! Huskarls are a heroic era unit unlockable via Season 12 challenges. Their main strength lies in burst damage of their skills and ability to buff fellow Norse units. However, due to their long setup time, they require some game knowledge to time their skills correctly. Huskarls have several skills, but most of them are locked behind their core ability, the Skald song. After activation, it makes them chant for up to 15 seconds, during which they receive much more damage. The longer you chant, the stronger the effect and the longer it lasts. It's indicated by the special bar which fills up when they perform the song. The buff increases their movement speed, reduces damage taken, and increases slashing and blunt armor penetration. It applies to allied Norse units too, but I will get to that later. At the max chant level, they get 40% movement speed, 28% damage reduction, and 400 armor penetration. Song lasts for 23 seconds, but its effect gets weaker over time as the chant level drops. As I mentioned earlier, each chant level unlocks its corresponding skill. At the first stage, Huskarls get access to Gathering Storm. It's a short charge after which they hit enemies with their shields. It causes knockback and very low damage. Note that the description mentions knockdown, but I never saw it happening. Another thing is that they do not aim the charge, they just go straight ahead. So you need to make sure to orient them towards the target before using it. Personally, I rarely use this skill offensively because it's just very weak. However, you can use the charge to get some distance while retreating. The next stage unlocks Sea Surge. Huskarls charge to the nearest enemy and hit with their shields, dealing high damage. This skill is extremely weak against shields, so if there are any shielded units or players, it might be better to skip it. The last stage unlocks Huskarl Charge. They charge at the nearest enemies and perform two attacks, one with the axe and one with the shield. It has massive damage and easily breaks through block. Huskarl Charge is their most powerful skill, and you should always try to use it during the fight. Okay, we got the additional skills covered, but we are not done with the Skald song yet. As I said before, it provides some buffs to the allied Norse units in the small circle around Huskarls. Buff lasts for 20 seconds and grants 10% damage reduction and around 100 armor penetration. It's indicated by a red glow on the hands of the affected units. Note that it doesn't matter how long you chant. The effect is always the same. And by the way, by Norse I mean units from Season 12 and Season 7. Keep in mind that your allies get the buff only if they stay near your Huskarls when they start the song. If someone comes around while they are already chanting, they won't get anything. Because the buff is not affected by the song duration and the cooldown is very low, you should use it every time you are near allied Norsemen. Just go to them, pop the skill and immediately cancel it. It costs you nothing and you never know if they won't get in the fight in the next 20 seconds. There is one more important thing about the Skald song. It changes the attack patterns of your Huskarls. In their default stance, they mostly attack with the shield bash. It's very bad because it deals minimal damage. However, when you buff them up, they swing with their axes and shields, which are much more effective. When fully buffed up, they even perform double strikes with an axe. Attack patterns are also important in the context of the Veterancy lines, but I will get to them later. Overall, they are useless in combat when the chant is not active. But there is one trick you can use when caught without the buff. The chant effect stays active for a few seconds after the bar is depleted. So you can use the Skald song and immediately cancel it with the attack command. It's not super effective, but it will help you get the most of the bad situation. And lastly, the quick note about allied Huskarls interaction. Your Skald song buff doesn't stack with the allied one. Attack patterns, skills and veterancy bonuses are also not enabled by the allied chant. Okay, now we got the Skald song covered. But Huskarls have one more skill which is usable when the chant bar is empty. The Boar Snout makes them form up in front of you and push back enemies. It's a rather bad skill because of a number of reasons. Firstly, the damage is very low. You trade it for constant pushbacks, but with a lot of units having some sort of sim immunity, it's not very effective in matches. The best use I have found for this skill is stopping cavalry. With Boar Snout active, your Huskarls will stun horses with every hit. However, you cannot use it after you use the chant, so in practice you will rarely have the option to do so. Boar Snout also boosts the movement speed of your Huskarls, so you can use it to move around the map. Alright, let's talk about Veterancy now. Just make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you find this video useful. Thank you. Huskarls have 3 Veterancy lines. In general, the top line focuses on damage and axes, middle on defense and shield, and the bottom line improves the Skald song. Most of the nodes are simple stat increases, so I will focus only on few which I consider the most important. Let's begin with the middle line. Its most notable perk is in the last node. It buffs the shield attacks with stacking slow, which stands at maximum stacks. It sounds great on paper, but if you think about it, it's not really useful. Firstly, the slow is very weak and it affects only units. Secondly, while the stun itself is useful, it doesn't make much difference because Huskarls already cause a lot of pushbacks, which are essentially stuns. And on top of that, a lot of meta units have CC resistance, so it's just useless against them. Because of the both reasons, I don't recommend this line. With the top line, you get a buff to the axe attacks. Each strike stacks armor reduction, and at maximum stacks it deals bonus bleed damage. It's just a much better option than the mid line. Armor reduction helps you and your allies, and the bleed is just a nice bonus. As for the bleed itself, I had a hard time figuring out how much damage it deals, as the numbers are all over the place. I saw it ranging from 12 to 3000 over a few ticks. However, I think the more important topic is how to apply it. Huskarls have to hit the target with an axe to cause the bleeding. Because of that, you have to engage while under the effect of the Skald song, or this node will be pointless. Keep in mind that it's hard to focus on a single unit in the bigger fight, so the bleed might not be as common as you would expect. Additionally, the enemy unit has to receive multiple axe hits for it to be applied, so very often they just die before you can see its effect. And it doesn't affect enemy players at all. In summary, the top line is about dealing as much damage as possible. I found it doing okay in sieges, but it should be even better in territory wars, where you want to do damage as quickly as possible without worrying about losing the unit. Personally, I switched to the bottom line with 2 nodes in the top line and the rest in the middle. Bottom line improves the Skald song with additional 10% damage reduction and healing. You also get a bonus 12% resistance against melee opponents. It's a lot of damage reduction and it's much more reliable than what other lines offer. As for healing, it is barely noticeable. However, you get a whole healing effect even if you cancel the chant, so you can use it while moving around the map. In general, I don't think the healing is a must-have, but other options aren't great either. Okay, time for the Doctrines. Just remember to leave a like and subscribe. Also, please take a look at the membership option if you want to further support the channel. Thank you! Huskarls are categorized as sword and shield units, so they have access to a solid range of doctrines. However, their skills do not count as a charge, so they can't use the charge related ones. Huskarls have 2 unique doctrines. First one comes from the challenges and it gives bonus movement speed and increases damage of Sea Surge and Huskarl Charge. The second one comes from the quest and it reduces the cooldown of Boar Snout by 1 second. In my opinion, there are 2 must-have doctrines, Iron Sights and Huskarl's Rider Doctrine. They are just too strong to pass. Another good pick is Epic Sword Doctrine, which provides slashing and blunt damage. The last 2 slots are up for debate. You can try to get your Huskarls even tankier with defense and block doctrines, or you can go for the damage with Siege Fighter and Breakthrough. I recently switched to damage on the reasoning that I'm tanky enough with the Skald song and the bottom line. Alright, now you know everything about the skills, veterancy and doctrines, but how to play them? Huskarls are actually quite simple. Firstly, you place them somewhere near the front line. Then you use the Skald song, wait until your buff is fully loaded, move near enemies and use the Huskarl Charge. when the buff drops to the second level, use the Sea Surge. After they finish the swing, you need to assess the situation. If you are winning, then stay in the fight but don't use the Gathering Storm. If the fight is dragging out, then retreat and buff up again. That was the quick summary, let's get into details now. Because of the extreme speed when buffed up, you can quickly cover vast distances, which is very useful considering that fight probably moved on before you fully charged up. Of course, you should try to spend most of the buff duration fighting and not running around, but very often it's just not possible. You want to get close to the enemies before using Huskarl Charge, because their targeting is quite bad, and they tend to charge into obstacles or unreachable targets. You should also make use of the huge movement speed and try to flank your opponents before hitting them. As for retreating after the Sea Surge, the main strength of Huskarls lies in their skills. After using them, you are out of big damage options and you have to decide if leaving your Huskarls to act as a mid-shields is worth it. If you overstay it and you are fighting without the buff, then make sure to tap the Skald song on each cooldown. If you use it and instantly cancel it, you will get 1 or 2 seconds of the buff, but you won't get the penalty of increased damage taken. Apart from fighting, remember to buff up your allies when possible. If you see some berserkers hanging around, go near them and use the chant. I also wanted to mention that you should mainly use the F2 formation. It makes the move much faster, so I don't see any reason to switch to the other one. Just keep in mind that they won't engage on their own when staying in this formation. Oh, and that reminded me, Huskarls get aggressive after they finish the Skald song. Keep an eye on them if you use it but didn't engage, because they might wander off in a random direction. In conclusion, Huskarls are a strong pick, especially if you have a lot of Norse units in your team. They have a big damage potential with their charge, which allows them to burst down common meta units. And they can also act as a tanky mid-shields when needed. Their main disadvantage is a long downtime if you mistime your Skald song, but with practice you will get it right when needed. And that would be it for this guide. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you found it useful. If you have any questions, then head out to the comments section or my Discord, link is in the description. And if you like what I'm doing and want to further support the channel, then check out the membership option or take a look at the content creator packs. Details are in the description. Thank you for watching and see you next time.